In this upcoming clip, Noam Chomsky, who is a strong critic of terrorism, also emphasizes understanding the root causes that might lead to it. Here's a breakdown of his views. Chomsky has always condemned terrorism and violence against civilians. He believes such acts are inexcusable, regardless of the perpetrator. However, he argues that simply condemning terrorism isn't enough. It's crucial to understand the historical, political, and social factors that might create an environment where people resort to such violence. This could include foreign interventions, oppressive regimes, or feelings of hopelessness. Chomsky often criticizes powerful states, particularly the US, for their foreign policies. He argues that these policies, like support for repressive regimes or unilateral military actions, can breed resentment and fuel terrorism. Now off to this very informative clip of Noam Chomsky.
Now, see, there's an interesting reaction here when this is brought up. I mean, the reaction is you're justifying terrorism. You're not justifying terrorism. Justification and explanation are two different things. What you're pointing out is that there's an explanation for terrorism. And if you want to stop it, you look at the explanation. When you look at the explanation, you quite often find that violent, powerful states try to evoke terrorism because it's in their interest. So that's no justification. It's an explanation. Terrorist acts are indeed loathsome. I mean, it's loathsome when Leon Klinghoffer was thrown off a boat in a wheelchair and killed on October 7th, 1984, 5, whatever. Yeah. And it was also loathsome when a week earlier Israel bombed Tunis and killed about 75 people using smart bombs that the United States probably supplied them. That's loathsome too. We regard one as terrorism. We don't regard the other as terrorism because one was wholesale terrorism on our side and the other was retail terrorism on their side.
Well, that particular attack, the Tunis bombing, is of course always framed in the concept of retaliation.
That's
it's
right.
A response. It's not initiated.
Yeah. Now, every terrorist act is always called retaliation. So the Achille Lauro, the sequence was as follows. First came a PLO attack in Larnaca, Cyprus, where 3 Israelis were killed. And the killers were immediately caught, placed on trial. They're now in jail. The second, about a week later, came the Israeli bombing of Tunis, in which, according to Israeli correspondents, there about 75 people were killed, 20 Lebanese and 55 Palestinians, mostly civilians. Then a week after that came the Achille Lauro hijacking with the Klinghoffer assassination. Now, all 3 of these things were called retaliations by the people who did them. The Larnaca, Cyprus operation was called a retaliation for a fact which is suppressed here, namely that the Israeli Navy, using agents based on Cyprus apparently, had been for years, for over 10 years, hijacking boats. That's called terrorism when the other guy does it. Hijacking boats in transit between Cyprus and various parts of Lebanon, northern Lebanon. In fact, often they had been taking Palestinians off those boats and handing them over to their own Maronite allies in Lebanon, who then killed them. And the PLO claimed that the Larnaca assassination was retaliation for that terrorism, many years of hijacking, which certainly happened, there's no doubt. All right, we didn't call that retaliation, we just called it terrorism. Then comes the Israeli bombing, which they called retaliation, except with one slight problem. It was not directed against the people who carried out the terrorist attack. In fact, Israel conceded that. In the small print, they conceded that the people they were bombing in Tunis apparently had nothing to do with the attack. But it was a cheap target. See, the people who had to do with the attack probably came from Syria, but that's not a cheap target. They can fight back. Tunis, on the other hand, is a defenseless target, so you attack that. That's the way it's always done. That was done, incidentally, with the complicity of the United States. The U.S. Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean certainly had the Israeli bombers under surveillance. Now, they claimed they couldn't see them, which is ridiculous. They had to fly all the way across the Mediterranean. They were refueled on flight. They passed by the most sophisticated radar and surveillance systems that the U.S. government military can establish, and somehow we claimed they were invisible. All right, that's nonsensical. They obviously knew they were coming, and they didn't warn Tunis. Tunis is an American ally, loyal American ally, but we didn't even warn them that the killers were on the way. So anyhow, they called that a retaliation, but of course it wasn't. It had nothing to do with the attack. Then comes the Achille Lauro hijacking. They called that a retaliation, namely for the Tunis bombing. And you can trace it back as far as you like, go back to the first interaction. And every step is called by the terrorists a retaliation for what came before, and in a certain sense it is. That's the cycle. Repression, violence, retaliation, more retaliation, preemption, etc. Now, in our ideological system, we have a very simple way to handle it. When the guys we don't like do it, it's terror. When the guys we do like do it, it's retaliation.
Well, I hope you liked the video and give the channel a subscribe. If you wish, you can join the channel as a member, this would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you would check out and subscribe to my other channel, Progressive Movement, link is on the homepage and in the comments section, thank you. Now, take care and bye-bye.